It's totally fine. I have a lot more stories.
That you do.
Yeah.
That you do.
Guilty as charged with the stories.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whenever it is you're listening to this. This is I've Got Something to Say, and I'm Chris Whiting, your host on this little podcast here. This week's episode is titled, Ding Dong, the Bitch is Dead. So, when I was a young boy, I wanted a dog so badly. And my parents tried to appease me with different pets. So I got 2 gerbils, Bert and Ernie. Every time you picked them up, they'd bite you, and those suckers broke the skin. So they died. I got Oscar the rabbit, and he just sat outside in a cage all the time. Got a huge double chin. You don't see many rabbits with double chins, but he was in a cage. He didn't do anything. So my pets were kind of duddaroos, really. And down the street, I would go visit my buddy Stevie, and he had a dog named Sparky. And I sort of adopted Sparky and thought, oh man, Sparky's the best. And I would just come home and just whine, and I want a dog. I want a dog. And one day, out of the blue, it wasn't like my parents said, okay, we'll look for a dog. One day, they come in with a puppy, and it's, here you go, Chris, you got a dog. And that's like one of my best memories ever. It was that unanticipated, didn't know it was coming, amazing surprise. And she was this cute little terrier mix with black circles like around her eyes, and then the rest of her was white, and she was just so cute and adorable. I named her Gypsy. I wanted to have a pet with an E name on the end because Sparky was the other dog that I really liked. So then I went with Gypsy, and it just dawned on me that my daughters are Molly and Abby. So I don't know. This is a theme apparently going throughout my life. But she was great. I mean, we really had some adventures, her and I. And I think it was about 3rd grade, probably 8-ish when I got this dog. And as I grew up into my teenage years, every time I did something I felt guilty about, or I was angry with my parents or whatever, I would go talk to Gypsy about it. And she was a wonderful listener. Just a really, really great dog. And then I grew up, as kids tend to do, and I headed off to college, and Gypsy was this aging dog that stayed back home. But when I'd come home, she was all excited to see me, and poor little thing, she kind of got filled with these little cysts along her body and got kind of lumpy and overweight. But man, she would hobble up on her feet and just run over and lick me to death every time I came home. So a couple of years into college, I do remember it was the summer that I was 21 years old. I was back home. I was working at my friend Patrick's dad's foundry, which was my summer job, and I'd work at the foundry, and it would remind me that it would be really good for me to stay in school, so I didn't have to do manual labor because A, I wasn't good at it, and B, it was just so hot. So we would work from 6 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon to try and beat some of the heat, because not only was it hot outside, but I was working at this, they called it a core machine, and it was 700 degrees, and you would bake these cores. You'd shoot sand up into these molds. It would bake them. You'd pull them out. And it was just hot, dirty work. Grateful to have that job for sure, and learned a lot. But I would come home from that thing, and I'd be dirty, and I would be so hungry from working so hard. And my house we'd never hurt for snacks at my house. Let me just put it that way. All growing up, I wasn't one of those kids who had parents that said, "Now, don't eat that. You're going to spoil your dinner." It was, hey, carte blanche. Whatever you want to eat, go for it. And my mom, God love her, would buy me just about any snack that I wanted. So we always had peppermint ice cream. We always had a log of cookie dough. We'd always have, this isn't really bad for you, but I'd have a jar of jalapeno peppers. And a lot of times I would just come home and have jalapenos, cookie dough, and ice cream. And that would be my snack when I got home. Then we got onto these Hostess cakes. and my mom would stock up on the Hostess and would fill the freezer in the basement full of frozen snowballs and Suzy Q's and cupcakes and Twinkies. And man, there are a few things in life as good as a frozen Hostess snack cake. So I really got into those. And when I was away at school, I didn't have the luxury of having a freezer full of snack cakes. So when I was at home, I took full advantage of this. And it is truly a wonder. I mean, I should probably be at least 400 pounds at this point in my life, and I should certainly be diabetic with the way that I ate these things. But I was home that summer. I don't remember where everybody was, but when I got home at 2:45 in the afternoon, I was the only one home. It was just me and Gypsy hanging out. So I went downstairs and I got myself a ding dong. And I came upstairs from the freezer in the basement, and Gypsy was at the top of the stairs sitting and wagging her tail. And she saw that I had a ding dong, and man, she wanted one. And this was, back in the late 80s. So we didn't really care too much about things like seat belts or sunscreen or dogs eating chocolate. We just did it. We went with it. She wanted part of my ding dong. So, I said, really, of course. So I snapped my frozen ding dong in half, and I gave Gypsy half my ding dong, and she started to, chew it down, which she wasn't much of a chewer, Gypsy. She was more of a gulper, kind of a swallower. She would just tear into her food, do an alligator roll, and it was gone. So I gave her the ding dong. It seemed to be fine. It sort of disappeared. But then she started acting weird, kind of staggering around, and then she started coughing / gagging, and I'm like, oh God, this isn't good. So I get down on the ground, and I open up her mouth, and I look, and I can see the ding dong way at the back of her throat. So I'm trying my best to fish this ding dong out of her mouth, and I couldn't get it. And after several minutes, she just laid down on the floor and her tongue came out. And I remember this so vividly. It was just deep blue, almost black. And her little pink tongue was no more. And I'm standing there looking at my dog that I've just killed with a snack cake and feeling so horrible. I was just floored. Like I said, nobody was home and I didn't know what to do. So I called my Mimi and Granddad. Granddad seemed to know what to do with animals. I remember one time when Gypsy was younger, she had taken a kitten and broken its back while my Mimi and Granddad were watching me. And my granddad promised me that he would take care of it, and so he took it, and I asked, and they told me, yep, he fixed it up. The kitten's fine. Well, I found out later the kitten was not fine, and he took care of the kitten another way so it wouldn't suffer. So I called Granddad, and I'm in tears, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Gypsy's dead. I killed her with a ding-dong, and I feel terrible. And he's like, it's all right. I'll be right over. So he came over, and he got her. He wrapped her up in a blanket and got her into his car. And God bless my granddad. He was so caring and giving of all of us grandkids. So he took Gypsy out to his backyard and he dug a hole and he put her down in there, and he even mixed up some Quickcrete and made a little tombstone for her in his backyard and put her little name in it, and here lies Gypsy, killed by Ding Dong. And he didn't say that, but it was a here lies Gypsy. Really sweet. Somebody else owns that house now. Sometime I'm going to get sneaky and go by their house and just walk into the backyard and see if my tombstone is still there for Gypsy. But it was a nice little way to commemorate her. And it was just a very weird time for me because all of these little pieces of my childhood were falling away. And I thought about this because the other night I watched Toy Story 3 for the first time. Had you ever seen that, Paul? It really touching as Andy's grown up. He's going off to college. You know, he's getting rid of his toys. And I think that's what made me think about this was I was at this time in my life where pieces of my childhood were falling away. I'd finished high school. I'd left home. I was going to college. And some friends I kept, but a lot of my friends from high school were falling away and other friends were taking their place, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, no longer being a permanent resident at my mom and dad's house. And Gypsy dying, losing her, was just another piece of that childhood falling away. But I do believe that she forgives me for that. And if you got to leave this planet with your best friend hugging you and the taste of chocolate in your mouth, it can't be the worst way to go, right? So I miss her. I think fondly on her, and I hope to see her someday across that rainbow bridge. Love you, Gypsy. That's it for this edition of I've Got Something to Say. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening. Many thanks to the good folks at KCTK Radio, my good buddy Paul for producing and making this happen, providing the studio space, and really just setting the table for the magic to take place. Talk to y'all next time.